Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. I'm sure that we all are aware that there are ongoing negotiations between the United States and the Islamic Republic of Iran over the nuclear capability of Iran. Now, technically, it's not just the United States. It's a group called the P5+1, meaning there's 6 nations that are negotiating with Iran over the nuclear program. And those 6 nations are Britain, France, Germany, China, and Russia. That's the P5, and then we're the 1. So 6 nations are negotiating with the Republic of Iran. And because there's been concern for many years over the possibility that Iran could achieve a nuclear capability for a nuclear weapon, there has been increasing diplomatic pressure on Iran to try to slow down this process and get them to end it altogether. And this has taken the form, for the most part, what we call sanctions. Increasingly, we've cut off bank accounts, we've cut off trade, and we've cut off any number of things that make it more difficult for the Iranian economy to do what it would normally do if the sanctions weren't in place. And our purpose, certainly the P5+1 purpose in negotiating with Iran, is to keep them from getting the bomb. It's pure and simple, keeping them from getting a nuclear weapon. Now, if you look at it from Iran's standpoint, their supreme leader, Khomeini, has said the only purpose for us to be negotiating with the United States is to remove the West's only weapon, which is sanctions. So we don't want them to get the bomb, and they want to get out of sanctions. That's basically what the whole discussion boils down to, and has over a period of many months and even years gone into a long negotiating process. Now, finally, we got to the point about a month ago or so where we had what we call a framework. Now, I'm not sure what the framework is, except there's a plethora of ideas of what it consists of. And this plethora of ideas got to the point that, okay, we've got the basics in place, we just need to nail down a few details, and aren't we good? Didn't we do a good job? And Iran said, oh wow, we have won a victory here, aren't we good? We've done a good job. And other people started to get involved, and we'll start with Congress. Congress is, oh, wait a minute, not so fast. Congress needs to approve, at least the Senate, by the Constitution, needs to approve any treaty that you do with Iran. You can't just go sign a treaty. And the Obama administration said, well, it's not a treaty, it's an agreement, and it's not the same thing. So ultimately, Congress is in the process, apparently, of agreeing to have an up or down vote if and when an agreement is actually reached with Iran, where Congress will vote, yes, we go along with this, or no, we don't, and that would give the president the backing or lack of backing that he would need to put the agreement into effect. And Congress also, in its own inimitable way, decided, well, if it's an agreement, we can't count on it being any good past the next, the remainder of the Obama presidency, so we're going to write a letter to Khomeini and tell him that. So they did, which is an incredibly stupid idea from a diplomatic standpoint, but they did nonetheless, and it didn't really surprise Khomeini, I don't think. So finally, the agreement on the 30th of April or thereabouts came out. We have a framework, and the United States put out a statement. This is what's in this framework. Slowly, we will remove the sanctions from Iran. Iran will remove a certain number of centrifuges. We will have conditions in place where it will take them at least a year to create a nuclear weapon if they violate the agreement. And it's overall a good deal, and also we get the right to do on-the-spot inspections to make sure they're not cheating. And so Iran said, Khomeini, that not so fast, Buffalo Breath, and words similar to that. You Americans are a bunch of liars. It doesn't say that at all. The agreement says that you have to remove sanctions immediately on day 1 when this agreement is signed. All sanctions are gone on day 1. And furthermore, if you want a spot inspection, first of all, you can't visit any of our military facilities. And secondly, you need to give us 24 days notice before you go to any of our other facilities on your spot inspections. Well, that tells me that in 24 days they could hide whatever they are working on in these secret areas. So we have this dichotomy of which is right. So who is right in this situation, and how is it going to work? Well, if the treaty or agreement, however you want to call it, is signed finally and it comes through, ideally, we probably got a better deal than we might have if we didn't try at all. even though we gave up a lot in the negotiations, we gave up on a lot of our initial positions. And we feel that, well, with fewer centrifuges and the ability to go in and check on them, then we probably can delay any chance of them getting a nuclear bomb for at least a year. That's the bottom line. We didn't keep them from getting a bomb, we just slowed them down by a year as the best we could hope to get out of it, which I suppose is better than no deal at all. But on the other side, again, as I mentioned, the Iranians don't look at it the same way. They feel that they've got a good deal because spot inspection is really not a spot inspection, it's a 24-day notice. And oh, by the way, those sanctions need to come off immediately. So there's definitely a difference of opinion on what all of this means. Now, if there is no agreement at all, then we're in a situation where other options come into play. Now, both President Obama and former Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta, have told the Israelis, we've got your back here, we're not going to let Iran get the bomb. And their reputation is basically on this. So we've tried to reassure Israel that they're not going to be threatened by Iran with the bomb as part of this deal. And yet, Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel said if this agreement goes into effect, we're going to have a nuclear buildup. We're going to have a situation where a nuclear arms race in the region. Now, Joe Klein, who was a Democratic columnist in Time magazine, pointed out that probably the opposite would happen. If we don't get an agreement, then we would have a nuclear arms race in the region. So that certainly is an issue. Another issue with the agreement, if it goes into effect, you can make the argument that this gets rid of the idea of the Great Satan, because no one would make a deal with the Great Satan, so maybe the United States is not the Great Satan anymore. And oh, by the way, the people of Iran are largely pro-American, young people in the streets in particular, and if we do something negative, like a military attack or something like that, this could throw the whole situation out of kilter for years. And so there's this side of the argument. And then there is the other side of the argument, which says the Iranians really don't want a deal, they just want to get out of sanctions, and that when Khomeini announced the deal, he was very negative toward the United States, still regarded us as the enemy, still said we're the Great Satan, and everybody cheered that we were. And the bottom line and the problem with negotiating this whole agreement can go to an article that was written in the Wall Street Journal just a few weeks ago, co-authored by Henry Kissinger and George Shultz, both former secretaries of state, who basically said there is no congruence of interest between us and Iran. We envision a region of stable nation states. They see a revolutionary anti-Western order. So we are struggling with this dichotomy all the way along. So I'm not sure how it's going to come out. I'm not sure if we're going to get an agreement. I'm not sure if we're going to get a treaty. I don't know if it'll be approved. I don't know what will happen if it doesn't work. And you just have to stay tuned. But I don't see any really good outcome no matter what happens in this situation.